This is Bob Capetta from the College of the Florida Keys, and this lesson is on solving quadratic equations by factoring. Our first example is going to be to solve x squared minus 3x equals 4. What makes it a quadratic equation is that there is an exponent of 2. So what's our process? The first thing we're going to need to do is to set the equation equal to 0. So right now the equation equals 4. If I add negative 4 to both sides, I will have it equaling 0. So adding negative 4 to both sides, the result will be x squared minus 3x minus 4. Our next strategy is to factor. So I have this trinomial. X squared minus 3x minus 4 needs to be factored. So we'll go ahead and put in our factor box. X squared in the lower left-hand corner, negative 4 in the upper right-hand corner, and the middle term, negative 3x, goes outside. How to build x squared? Only option is x times x. How to build negative 4? Well, you could go negative 2 times 2. You could go 1 times negative 4. I'm going to choose to go with negative 4 times positive 1, and let's check that. Negative 4 times x is negative 4x in this cell. 1 times x is 1x in that cell. And you'll notice that negative 4x plus 1x is negative 3x, so that has been done successfully. So the factored version of the left-hand side is x minus 4 times x plus 1. So once we're there, we have two things multiplying that equals 0. A times b equals 0. If a times b equals 0, either a has to be 0 or b has to be 0. If two things multiply together to give you a result of 0, at least one of them must be 0. So that tells us our next strategy, which is to set each factor equal to 0. So x minus 4 will be 0, and x plus 1 will be 0. Now we have to solve for x. Adding 4 to both sides here, we'll get x is 4. Adding negative 1 to both sides there, we'll get x is negative 1. So those are our two solutions. A quadratic equation can have two solutions. And I like to write those solutions in set notation. So curly brace notation will be my final solution. And I'll say that the solution to that quadratic equation is 4 comma negative 1. 4 and negative 1 are both solutions. Notice that is not interval notation. That is listing both solutions, not a range of values. Let's look at another example. I want to solve x squared plus 21 equals 10x. Our first strategy, set the equation equal to 0. I want to subtract 10x from both sides, but that's the middle term. X squared is first, x is second, number is third. So when I subtract 10x from both sides, I will get x squared minus 10x plus 21 is 0. The next move will be to factor. So we'll go ahead and use the factor puzzle to do that, the factor box. X squared in the lower left-hand corner, 21 in the upper right-hand corner, negative 10x outside. How to build x squared? X times x. How to build 21? Well, 1 times 21 or 3 times 7, but you'll notice that the middle term is negative 10, so we will have to go with negative 3 times negative 7, checking that negative 3 times negative 7 is indeed positive 21. Then doing the multiplication, negative 7 times x is negative 7x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. When we add those together, negative 7x and negative 3x is negative 10x. That's factored correctly. So we're going to write it down as x minus 7 times x minus 3 equals 0. And our next move is going to be to set each factor equal to 0. So I'll need x minus 7 to equal 0 or x minus 3 equals 0. If two things multiply, either the first thing is 0 or the second thing is 0. That's our idea here. Adding 7 to both sides, we get x is 7. Adding 3 to both sides, we get x is 3. So to solve the equations, that's relatively easy. And then the last thing I would like you to do is to express the solution in curly brace form. So we'll say curly brace 7 comma 3 or curly brace 3 comma 7. The order does not matter for curly brace notation, but it does matter for interval notation. So please keep that in mind. Our next problem is to solve 5y plus 2y squared equals 3. Our first requirement is to set the equation equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides, but let's write it in the more standard order, the decreasing powers. So 2y squared will come first, then plus 5y, then minus 3 will give me 0. My next move is to factor. So we will throw this trinomial into the factor box. 2y squared in the lower left, negative 3 in the upper right, plus 5y out in the middle. That is the y to the first power term, what we call the middle term. 2y squared has to be 2y times y. No option, really. Negative 3, we have negative 3 times 1, 1 times negative 3. That's really about it. One's positive, one's negative. What did we try here? Negative 1 times y is negative 1y. 3 times 2y is 6y. And you can see that 6y plus negative 1y is 5y. So we have successfully factored that. And always make sure that this last corner, 3 times negative 1, really is negative 3. And it is. So we factored this, and the result is 2y minus 1 times y plus 3. The next thing we've got to do is to set each factor equal to 0, because if two things multiply, either the first thing is 0, or the second thing is 0, or they're both 0. So setting each factor equal to 0, we get 2y minus 1 is 0, or y plus 3 is 0. Then our next move is to solve the pair of equations. So adding 1 to both sides, we get 2y equals 1. Adding negative 3 to both sides, we get y is negative 3. But if 2y is 1, dividing both sides by 2, y is a half. So this first equation has a solution of y is 1/2. The second equation has a solution of y is negative 3. And the last thing I want you to do is to express that solution in set form, curly brace form, set builder notation form, and our result will be 1/2 comma negative 3. Okay, our next equation is 11x squared equals negative 33x. First step, set the equation equal to 0. We'll add 33x to both sides and get 11x squared plus 33x equals 0. Next is to factor. Well, I don't need to use the factor box on this one because there is a common factor in each of those terms. 11 and 33 both take 11, so 11 counts as a common factor. X squared and x both take an x, so therefore 11x is the common factor. When I divide by 11x, 11x squared divided by 11x is just x. 33x divided by 11x is just 3. So I've successfully factored it. My next move is to set each factor equal to 0. So that would be 11x is 0 or x plus 3 is 0. Dividing by 11, x is 0 over 11, x is 0 on this side. Adding negative 3, here we get x is negative 3. So to solve the equations, that's what we get. And then the last thing I want you to do is to write your solution in curly brace form. Again, 0 comma negative 3 or negative 3 comma 0. The order of curly brace form does not matter, but it does in interval notation. That's why interval notation uses round brackets and square brackets, and curly braces uses neither of those. All right, next I want to solve x squared plus 16 is negative 8x. Set the equation equal to 0, so we'll add 8x to both sides, and it'll go in the middle. X squared plus 8x is 16. As we've seen so far in all of our examples, quadratic equations can't have two solutions. Let's see if that happens here. My next goal is to factor. So I want to factor x squared plus 8x plus 16. How am I going to do that? Pull out the factor box. X squared's got to be x times x. But 16, 1 times 16, 4 times 4, negative 1 times negative 16, negative 4 times negative 4. There's a positive 8x there, so that indicates which one we have to use. Positive 4 times positive 4. Positive 4 times x is positive 4x. Positive 4 times x is positive 4x. It adds together to give me 8x. So indeed, we have successfully factored it. And the result is x plus 4 times x plus 4 equals 0. You could say x plus 4 quantity squared equals 0, but I think I prefer writing it this way. Next, I want to set each factor equal to 0. So x plus 4 is 0 or x plus 4 is 0. And then I have to solve those equations, and I get x is -4 or x is -4. There's only one solution in this case. Only one solution to this quadratic equation. We're going to express that in curly brace form, and we get -4 as our one solution. So a quadratic can have up to two solutions, and often quadratic equations will have two solutions, but here's a case where it has one. Next we have 4x cubed minus 22x squared plus 30x equals 0. The first statement says to set the equation equal to 0, well, it already does equal 0, so nothing else I have to do there. Next up we want to factor, but you'll notice that there is a common factor to all three of these. 4, 22, and 30 all take a 2, so 2 is common to all three terms. X cubed, x squared, and x all take an x. So 2 and x are common to all three terms. I'm going to factor out that greatest common factor. When I factor out the 2x, I'm left with 2x squared minus 11x plus 15. And we need to see if that can be factored, so we will use the factor box to do that piece. 2x squared in the lower left, 15 in the upper right. The middle term of -11x goes outside. Now to build 2x squared, the only reasonable thing to do is to go 2x times x. Positive 15. Well, you could have -3 times -5, -5 times -3, positive 1 times positive 15, positive 3 times positive 5. But I have a -11x there, so that indicates I'm going to need to have negative factors. So let's try -3, -5. It's just a matter of which order is going to work for me. So I'll try -5 here, and I'll try -3 there. -5 times x is -5x in this slot. -3 times 2x is -6x in that slot. When we add those together, -5x plus -6x is -11x. So that makes us happy. We have successfully factored this. Now don't forget the 2x that's here. So that portion stays there. 2x stays there, but then we have 2x minus 5 times x minus 3 equaling 0. Now our next move is to set each factor equal to 0. So 2x would be 0, 2x minus 5 is 0, x minus 3 is 0. We want to solve each equation. If we do that, if 2x is 0, x is 0. If x minus 3 is 0, adding 3 to both sides, x is 3. If 2x minus 5 is 0, 2x is 5. Then, of course, solving for x, dividing both sides by 2, we get x is 5/2. So I have three solutions. Now remember I said a quadratic can have up to two solutions. This is not quadratic. This is third order. A quadratic equation has the highest power of 2. This has the highest power of 3. And a very important rule tells us if the highest power is 3, you can have up to 3 solutions, which we have here. 3 solutions, 0, 5/2, and 3. We like to write it in the form with a curly brace. So the curly brace form for those 3 would be 0, 5/2, 3. That happens to be in order from lowest to highest, but you don't have to do that. Any order for the curly braces will work. And that concludes this lesson.